Steps to Realization, a class lecture delivered in America. First among the qualifications required for the aspirant of jhana, or wisdom, come shama and dhamma, which may be taken together. They mean the keeping of the organs in their own centers without allowing them to stray out. I shall explain to you first what the word organ means. Here are the eyes. The eyes are not the organs of vision, but only the instruments. Unless the organs also are present, I cannot see, even if I have eyes. But given both the organs and the instruments, unless the mind attaches itself to these two, no vision takes place. So in each act of perception, three things are necessary. First, the external instruments, then the internal organs, and lastly the mind. If any one of them be absent, then there will be no perception. Thus the mind acts through two agencies, one external and the other internal. When I see things, my mind goes out, becomes externalized, but suppose I close my eyes and begin to think. The mind does not go out, it is internally active. But in either case, there is activity of the organs. When I look at you and speak to you, both the organs and the instruments are active. When I close my eyes and begin to think, the organs are active but not the instruments. Without the activity of these organs, there will be no thought. You will find that none of you can think without some symbol. In the case of the blind man, he is also to think through some figure. The organs of sight and hearing are generally very active. You must bear in mind, by the word organ is meant the nerve center in the brain. The eyes and ears are only the instruments of seeing and hearing, and the organs are inside. If the organs are destroyed by any means, even if the eyes or the ears be there, we shall not see or hear. So in order to control the mind, we must first be able to control these organs, to restrain the mind from wandering outward or inward, and keep the organs in their respective centers, is what is meant by the words shama and dhamma. Shama consists in not allowing the mind to externalize, and dhamma in checking the external instruments. Now comes uparati, which consists in not thinking of things of the senses. Most of our time is spent in thinking about sense objects, things which we have seen or which we have heard, which we shall see or shall hear, things which we have eaten or are eating or shall eat, places where we have lived, and so on. We think of them or talk of them most of our time. One who wishes to be a Vedantin must give up this habit. Then comes the next preparation. It is a hard task to be a philosopher. Titikasha, the most difficult of all, it is nothing less than the ideal forbearance. Resist not evil. This requires a little explanation. We may not resist an evil, but at the same time we may feel very miserable. A man may say very harsh things to me, and I may not outwardly hate him for it, may not answer him back, and may restrain myself from apparently getting angry, but anger and hatred may be in my mind, and I may feel very badly towards the man. That is not non-resistance. I should be without any feeling of hatred or anger, without any thought of resistance. My mind must then be as calm as if nothing had happened, and only when I have got to that state have I attained to non-resistance and not before. Forbearance of all razors, without even a thought of resisting or driving it out, without even any painful feeling in the mind or any remorse. This is titiksha. Suppose I do not resist, and some great evil comes thereby. If I have titiksha, I should no feel any remorse for not having resisted. When the mind has attained to that state, it has become established in titiksha. People in India do extraordinary things in order to produce this titikasha. They bear tremendous heat and cold without caring. They do not even care for snow, because they take no thought for the body. It is left to itself, as if it were a foreign thing. The next qualification required is shraddha, faith. One must have tremendous faith in religion and God. Until one has it, one cannot aspire to be a jnani. A great sage once told me that not 1 in 20 million in this world believed in God. I asked him why, and he said, suppose there is a thief in this room, and he gets to know that there is a mass of gold in the next room, and only a very thin partition between the two rooms. What will be the condition of that thief? I answered, he will not be able to sleep at all. His brain will be actively thinking of some means of getting at the gold, and he will think of nothing else. Then he replied, do you believe that a man could believe in God and not go mad to get him? If a man sincerely believes that there is that immense, infinite mine of bliss, and that it can be reached, would not that man go mad in his struggle to reach it? Strong faith in God and a consequent eagerness to reach him constitute shraddha. Then comes samadhana, or constant practice, to hold the mind in God. Nothing is done in a day. Religion cannot be swallowed in the form of a pill. It requires hard and constant practice. The mind can be conquered only by slow and steady practice. Next is mumukshuttva, the intense desire to be free. Those of you who have read Edwin Arnold's Light of Asia remember his translation of the first sermon of Buddha, where Buddha said, "Ye suffer from yourselves, none else compels. None other holds you, that ye live and die, and whirl upon the wheel and hug and kiss its spokes of agony, its tire of tears, its nave of nothingness." All the misery we have is of our own choosing, such is our nature. The old Chinaman, who having been kept in prison for 60 years, was released on the coronation of the new emperor, exclaimed when he came out that he could not live. He must go back to his horrible dungeon among the rats and mice. He could not bear the light. So he asked them to kill him or send him back to the prison, and he was sent back. Exactly similar is the condition of all men. We run headlong after all sorts of misery, and are unwilling to be freed from them. Every day we run after pleasure, and before we reach it we find it is gone. It has slipped through our fingers. Still we do not cease from our mad pursuit, but on and on we go, blinded fools that we are. In some oil mills in India, bullocks are used that go round and round to grind the oilseed. There is a yoke on the bullock's neck. They have a piece of wood protruding from the yoke, and on that is fastened a wisp of straw. The bullock is blindfolded in such a way that it can only look forward, and so it stretches its neck to get to the straw. In doing so, it pushes the piece of wood out a little further, and it makes another attempt with the same result, and yet another, and so on. It never catches a straw, but goes round and round in the hope of getting it, and in so doing grinds out the oil. In the same way, you and who are born slaves to nature, money and wealth, wives and children, are always chasing a wisp of straw, a mere chimera, and are going through an innumerable round of lives without obtaining what we seek. The great dream is love. We are all going to love and to be loved. We are all going to be happy and never meet with misery. But the more we go towards happiness, the more it goes away from us. Thus the world is going on, society goes on, and we, blinded slaves, have to pay for it without knowing. Study your own lives and find out how little of this happiness there is in them, and how little in truth you have gained in the course of this wild goose chase of the world. Do you remember the story of Solon and Croesus? The king said to the great sage that Asia Minor was a very happy place. And the sage asked him, "Who is the happiest man?" "I have not seen anyone very happy." "Nonsense," said Croesus, "I am the happiest man in the world." "Wait, sir, till the end of your life. Don't be in a hurry," replied the sage, and went away. In course of time the king was conquered by the Persians, and they ordered him to be burnt alive. The funeral pyre was prepared, and when poor Croesus saw it, he cried aloud, "Solon, Solon!" On being asked to whom he referred, he told his story, and the Persian emperor was touched and saved his life. Such is the life story of each one of us. Such is the tremendous power of nature over us. It repeatedly kicks us away, but still we pursue it with feverish excitement. We are always hoping against hope. This hope, this chimera maddens us. We are always hoping for happiness. There was once a great king in ancient India who was once asked 4 questions, of which one was, "What is the most wonderful thing in the world?" Hope was the answer. This is the most wonderful thing. Day and night we see people dying around us, and yet we think we shall not die. We never think that we shall die or that we shall suffer. Each man thinks that success will be his, hoping against hope, against all odds, against all mathematical reasoning. Nobody is ever really happy here. If a man be wealthy and have plenty to eat, his digestion is out of order and he cannot eat. If a man's digestion be good, and we have the digestive power of a cormorant, he has nothing to put into his mouth. If he be rich, he has no children. If he be hungry and poor, he has a whole regiment of children and does not know what to do with them. Why is it so? Because happiness and misery are the obverse and the reverse of the same coin. He who takes happiness must take misery also. We all have this foolish idea that we can have happiness without misery, and it has taken such possession of us that we have no control of the senses. When I was in Boston, a young man came up to me and gave me a scrap of paper on which he had written a name and an address, followed by these words: "All the wealth and all the happiness of the world are yours if you only know how to get them. If you come to me, I will teach you how to get them. Charge $5. He gave me this and said, "What do you think of this?" I said, young man, why don't you get the money to print this? You don't even have enough money to get this printed. He did not understand. He was infatuated with the idea that he could get immense wealth and happiness without any trouble. There are two extremes into which men are running. One is extreme optimism, when everything is rosy and nice and good. The other extreme pessimism, when everything seems to be against them. The majority of men have more or less undeveloped brains. 1 in a million we see with a well-developed brain. The rest either have peculiar idiosyncrasies or are monomaniacs. Naturally, we run into extremes. When we are healthy and young, we think that all the wealth of the world will be ours, and when later we get kicked out by society like footballs and get older, we sit in a corner and croak and throw cold water on the enthusiasm of others. Few men know that with pleasure there is pain, and with pain pleasure, and as pain is disgusting, so is pleasure, as it is the twin brother of pain. It is derogatory to the glory of man that he should be going after pain, and equally derogatory that he should be going after pleasure. Both should be turned aside by men whose reason is balanced. Why will not men seek freedom from being played around? This moment we are whipped, and when we begin to weep, nature gives us $1. Again we are whipped, and when we weep, nature gives us a piece of gingerbread, and we begin to laugh again. The sage wants liberty. He finds that sense objects are all vain, and that there is no end to pleasure and pain. How many rich people in the world want to find fresh pleasure? All pleasures are old, and they want new ones. Do you not see how many foolish things they are inventing every day just to titillate the nerves for a moment, and that done, here comes another reaction. The majority of people are just like a flock of sheep. If the leading sheep falls into a ditch, all the rest follow and break their necks. In the same way, what one leading member of society does, all the other do, without thinking what they are doing. When a man begins to see the vanity of worldly things, he will feel he ought not to be thus played upon or borne along by nature. That is slavery. If a man has a few kind words said to him, he begins to smile, and when he hears a few harsh words, he begins to weep. He is a slave to a bit of bread, to a breath of air, a slave to dress, a slave to patriotism, to country, to name, and to fame. He is thus in the midst of slavery, and the real man has become buried within through his bondage. What you call man is a slave. When one realizes all this slavery, then comes a desire to be free, an intense desire comes. If a piece of burning charcoal be placed on a man's head, see how he struggles to throw it off. Similar will be the struggle for freedom of a man who really understands that he is a slave of nature. We now have seen what mumukshuttva, or the desire to be free, is. The next training is also a very difficult one. Nityanitya vivetka, discriminating between that which is true and that which is untrue, between the eternal and the transitory. God alone is eternal. Everything else is transitory. Everything dies. The angels die, men die, animals die, earth die, sun, moon, and stars all die. Everything undergoes constant change. The mountains of today were the oceans of yesterday and will be oceans tomorrow. Everything is in a state of flux. The whole universe is a massive change, but there is one who never changes, and that is God, and the nearer we get to him, the less will be the change for us. The less will nature be able to work on us, and when we reach him and stand with him, we shall conquer nature. We shall be masters of phenomena of nature, and they will have no effect on us. You see, if we really have undergone the above discipline, we really do not require anything else in this world. All knowledge is within us. All perfection is there already in the soul. But this perfection has been covered up by nature. Layer after layer of nature is covering up this purity of soul. What have we to do? Really, we do not develop our souls at all. What can develop the perfect? We simply take the evil off, and the soul manifests itself in its pristine purity, its natural innate freedom. Now begins the inquiry. Why is this discipline so necessary? Because religion is not attained through the ears, nor through the eyes, nor yet through the brain. No scriptures can make us religious. We may study all the books that are in the world, yet we may not understand a world of religion or of God. We may talk all our lives, and yet may not be the better for it. We may be the most intellectual people the world ever saw, and yet we may not come to God at all. On the other hand, have you not seen what irreligious men have been produced from the most intellectual training? It is one of the evils of your Western civilization that you are after intellectual education alone and take no care for the heart. It only makes men 10 times more selfish, and that will be your destruction. When there is conflict between the heart and the brain, let the heart be followed, because intellect has only one state, reason, and within that intellect works and cannot go beyond. It is the heart which takes one to the highest plane, which intellect can never reach. It goes beyond intellect and reaches to what is called inspiration. Intellect can never become inspired. Only the heart, when it is enlightened, becomes inspired. An intellectual, heartless man never becomes an inspired man. It is always the heart that speaks in the man of love. It discovers a greater instrument intellect can give you, the instrument of inspiration. Lost as the intellect is the instrument of knowledge, so is the heart the instrument of inspiration. In a lower state, it is a much weaker instrument than intellect. An ignorant man knows nothing, but he is a little emotional by nature. Compare him with a great professor. What wonderful power the latter possesses! But the professor is bound by his intellect, and he can be a devil or an intellectual man at the same time. But the man of heart can never be a devil. No man with emotion was ever a devil. Properly cultivated, the heart can be changed, and will go beyond intellect. It will be changed into inspiration. Man will have to go beyond intellect in the end. The knowledge of man, his powers of perception, of reasoning, and intellect and heart, all are busy churning this milk in the world. Out of long churning comes butter, and this butter is God. Men of heart get the butter, and the buttermilk is left for the intellectual. These are all preparations for the heart, for that love, for that intense sympathy appertaining to the heart. It is not at all necessary to be educated or learned to get to God. A sage once told me, to kill others, one must be equipped with swords and shields, but to commit suicide a needle is sufficient. So to teach others, much intellect and learning are necessary, but not so for your own self-illumination. Are you pure? If you are pure, you will reach God. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God. If you are not pure, and you know all the sciences in the world, that will not help you at all. You may be buried in all the books you read, but that will not be of much use. It is the heart that reaches the goal. Follow the heart. A pure heart sees beyond the intellect. It gets inspired. It knows things that reason can never know, and whenever there is conflict between the pure heart and the intellect, always side with the pure heart, even if you think what your heart is doing is unreasonable. When it is desirous of doing good to others, your brain may tell you that it is not political right to do so. But follow your heart, and you will find that you make less mistakes than by following your intellect. The pure heart is the best mirror for the reflection of truth. So all these disciplines are for the purification of the heart, and as soon as it is pure, all truth flash upon it in a minute. All truth in the universe will manifest in your heart if you are sufficiently pure. The great truth about atoms and the finer elements and the fine perceptions of men were discovered ages ago by men who never saw a telescope or a microscope or a laboratory. How did they know all these things? It was through the heart. They purified the heart. It is open to us to do the same today. It is the culture of the heart really, and not that of the intellect that will lessen the misery of the world. Intellect has been cultured with the results the hundreds of scientists have been discovered, and their effect has been that the few have always made slaves of the many. That is all the good that has been done. Artificial wants have been created, and every poor man, whether he has money or not, desires to have those wants satisfied. And when he cannot, he struggles and dies in his little struggle. This is the result. Through the intellect is not the way to solve the problem of misery, but through the heart. If all this vast amount of effort had been spent in making men pure, gentler, more forbearing, this world would have 1,000-fold more happiness than it has today. Always cultivate the heart. Through the heart the Lord speaks, and through the intellect you yourself speak. You remember in the Old Testament where Moses was told, "Take off thy shoes from off thy feet, for the place wherein thou stand is holy ground." We must always approach the study of religion with that reverent attitude. He who comes with a pure heart and a reverent attitude, his heart will be opened, the doors will open for him, and he will see the truth. If you come with intellect only, you can have a little intellectual gymnastics, intellectual theories, but not truth. Truth has such a face that anyone who sees that face becomes convinced. The sun does not require any torch to show it. The sun is self-effulgent. If truth requires evidence, what will evidence that evidence? If something is necessary as witness for truth, where is the witness for that witness? We must approach religion with reverence and with love, and our heart will stand up and say, this is truth and this is untruth. The field of religion is beyond our senses, beyond even our consciousness. We cannot sense God. Nobody has seen God with his eyes or ever will. Nobody has God in his consciousness. I am not conscious of God, nor you, nor anyone. Where is God? Where is the field of religion? It is beyond the senses, beyond consciousness. Consciousness is only one of the many planes in which we work. You will have to transcend the field of consciousness to go beyond the senses. Approach near and near to your own center, and as you do that, you will approach near and near to God. What is the proof of God? Direct perception, pratyaksha. The proof of this wall is that I perceive it. God has to be perceived that way by thousands before, and will be perceived by all who want to perceive him. But this perception is no sense perception at all. It is supersensuous, superconsciousness, and all this training is needed to take us beyond the senses. By means of all sorts of past work and bondages, we are being dragged downward. These preparations will make us pure and light. Bondages will fall off by themselves, and we shall be buoyed up beyond this plane of sense perception to which we are tied down, and then we shall see and hear and feel things which men in the three ordinary states, vis-a-vis waking, dreaming, and sleep, neither feel nor see nor hear. Then we shall speak a strange language, as it were, and the world will not understand us, because it does not know anything but the senses. True religion is entirely transcendental. Every being that is in the universe has the potentiality of transcending the senses. Even the little worm will one day transcend the senses and reach God. No life will be a failure. There is no such thing as failure in the universe. 100 times man will hurt himself, 1,000 times he will tumble, but in the end he will realize that he is God. We know there is no progress in a straight line. Every soul moves, as it were, in a circle, and it will have to complete it, and no soul can go so low, but there will come a time when it will have to go upwards. No one will be lost. We are all projected from one common center, which is God. The highest, as well as the lowest life God ever projected, will come back to the Father of all lives, from whom all beings are projected, in whom all live, and into whom they all return. That is God. End of lecture.